This is my ranking of the best PS5 games I've played, based purely on my personal experience. Each title is placed from masterpiece down to trash, depending on how polished, memorable, and satisfying the overall experience felt. Let's get straight into the list. Borderlands 4 really feels like the refresh this series needed. I've been a fan for a long time, and the shift to a full open world makes a big difference. Exploring feels more open, and the improved movement like grappling and gliding makes fights more dynamic. Gunplay is smoother, and I had fun testing different builds and chasing stronger loot. The story is also more focused this time, which I appreciated, but it's not flawless. I dealt with bugs, performance drops, and some frustrating invisible walls while exploring. Co-op was exciting, but technical issues sometimes got in the way. Even with those problems, I kept playing because the core loop is still strong. That's why I'm placing this one in my good tier. Mafia: The Old Country takes the series back to early 1900s Sicily, and I actually like the setting more than I expected. The atmosphere is strong, the countryside looks beautiful, and the voice acting really carries the story. I also prefer the more linear structure instead of a huge open world full of filler. But when it comes to gameplay, it feels very standard. The shooting is basic cover-based combat, the stealth works but doesn't do anything new, and some systems like knife durability just feel unnecessary. The story is decent, but also predictable if you've seen a few gangster movies. I wasn't bored, but I also wasn't impressed. Because of that, this one lands in my mediocre tier. Black Myth: Wukong completely impressed me with its combat and boss fights. The action feels fast, responsive, and very skill-based, and I loved learning enemy patterns and managing my abilities carefully. The different spells, transformations, and focus system give you a lot of options without making things too complicated. Some of the bosses were tough, but beating them always felt fair and satisfying. Visually, it's one of the best-looking games I've played, and the world design really stands out. That said, I can't ignore the technical issues. I experienced crashes, audio bugs, and a few frustrating glitches during important moments. Even with those problems, the combat and overall experience were strong enough to carry it. This one easily earns a place in my excellent tier. Clair Obscur Expedition 33 stands out as one of the strongest RPGs I've played in years. The story focuses on mortality and sacrifice, and it handles those themes in a mature and emotional way. The world feels artistic and carefully crafted, and the voice acting adds real weight to every scene. The combat is where it really shines for me. It takes turn-based battles and makes them feel intense with timed dodges and parries that keep me fully focused. Each party member has unique mechanics, and building the right team setup feels smart and rewarding. I also like that it respects my time and doesn't drag on for 80 hours. A few late story moments feel slightly rushed, but overall it delivers on almost every level. This one belongs in my masterpiece tier. Ghost of Yōtei delivers exactly what I wanted after Tsushima, even if it doesn't reinvent much. The world is beautiful, with snowy mountains and colorful fields that constantly made me stop and look around. Combat is the real highlight for me. It feels smooth, fast, and satisfying, especially when I land perfect parries or switch weapons mid-fight. Atsu is also a stronger lead character, and her revenge story feels more personal and grounded, even if the overall plot is predictable. Stealth is solid but familiar, and some missions follow a safe formula. Still, I enjoyed clearing camps just for the fun of fighting. Because of how polished and satisfying it feels, this one goes into my great tier. Metal Gear Solid Delta Snake Eater feels like a very faithful remake, almost to a fault. The story is still strong, and the emotional moments hit just as hard as I remember. Visually, the upgrade is impressive, and the jungle environments look great in modern graphics. I also enjoyed revisiting the old-school stealth design, where each area feels like a small puzzle to solve. That said, it definitely shows its age. The gameplay isn't as deep or expansive as modern stealth games, and some boss fights feel outdated. I respect how closely it sticks to the original, but part of me wanted a bit more evolution. Because of that balance between nostalgia and limitations, this one sits in my good tier. Death Stranding 2 on the Beach feels like a sequel that fully understands what worked before and improves almost everything around it. The delivery loop is still there, but it's smoother, faster, and more engaging this time. Combat and stealth have more depth, and I actually enjoyed clearing enemy bases instead of avoiding them. The world design is stunning, and traveling across Australia has a strong sense of atmosphere. The story is classic Kojima, strange, emotional, and full of big ideas, and while it takes a little time to build momentum, the later chapters really pay off. It's weird in the best way, but also more focused and confident. Because of how much it refines and expands the original, this one lands in my excellent tier. Astro Bot is pure creativity from beginning to end. Every level introduces a new idea, mechanic, or surprise, and it never feels repetitive. The platforming is tight and responsive, and the temporary powers keep things fresh the entire time. I especially loved how it celebrates PlayStation history, with so many fun character cameos and themed levels that feel like mini tributes. The DualSense features also add a lot, making every jump, punch, and gadget feel more immersive. It's not overly difficult, but the optional challenge stages really test your skills. Most importantly, it never stops being fun. Because of its creativity, charm, and polish, this one easily earns a spot in my masterpiece tier. Sackboy: A Big Adventure is one of those platformers I feel didn't get enough credit. The levels are creative, colorful, and constantly introduce new mechanics that keep things fresh. I really like how each world has its own theme, and the handcrafted art style made everything feel warm and lively. The soundtrack is also a big highlight, with some great licensed tracks that make certain levels unforgettable. It's even better in co-op, and the multiplayer-only stages add extra fun. That said, I wasn't a fan of having to replay older levels to collect enough orbs to progress, which slowed the pacing a bit. Even with that frustration, the charm and creativity carry it easily. This one earns a solid place in my great tier. Helldivers 2 is one of the most fun multiplayer shooters I've played in years. Every mission turns into chaos in the best way, especially when things go wrong and my squad has to scramble to survive. The gunplay feels weighty, the stratagem system is smart, and I love how teamwork actually matters. Calling in airstrikes while trying to punch in button combos under pressure never gets old. There's also a ton of enemy variety, from massive bugs to heavily armed robots, which keeps missions unpredictable. Progression feels fair, and I never felt pushed towards spending money. It's definitely better with friends, and the launch had some server issues, but the core experience is strong enough to carry it. This one proudly sits in my excellent tier. Gran Turismo 7 feels like a return to classic Gran Turismo in a lot of good ways. I really enjoyed the cafe system because it slowly guides you through events while rewarding you with cars, which makes progression feel meaningful. The driving itself is the highlight for me. Every car handles differently, and the physics feel precise and satisfying whether I'm using a controller or a wheel. Visually, it looks fantastic, especially with the dynamic time of day and weather effects. That said, the rolling starts in career mode are frustrating, and the microtransactions left a bad taste. The car list also isn't as deep as I expected. Even with those issues, the core racing experience is strong enough to carry it. This one fits in my great tier. Until Dawn Remake still delivers the same tense, choice-driven horror story I remember, and that core experience is strong. The cast, the setting, and the branching decisions are just as entertaining, and the upgraded visuals definitely make Blackwood Pines look more realistic. The lighting and character models are improved, and some scenes look great on PS5, but beyond that, not much has changed. The gameplay is almost identical, and in some ways it actually feels slower because of the new camera and movement tweaks. I also noticed performance issues that hurt the experience. Since the original still holds up well and costs much less, it's hard to fully recommend this version at full price. For me, it lands in the good tier. Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart is one of those games where I was smiling almost the whole time. It looks incredible, loads instantly, and the rift jumps make the action feel fast and smooth. I love how the combat pushes me to keep moving, dashing around, and switching between crazy weapons like the topiary sprinkler and ricochet, but what really stayed with me is the story. Ratchet's doubts, Clank's growth, and especially Rivet as a new lead give this adventure real heart without losing the humor. Every planet feels unique, and the whole experience feels polished from the start. For me, this easily earns its place in the masterpiece tier. Days Gone Remastered is a game I have mixed feelings about. I like Deacon as a lead, and the emotional story about loss and survival in a zombie-filled Oregon still works for me. The Freaker hordes are intense, and riding around on the bike, upgrading it, and managing fuel adds real tension to exploring the open world. But as a remaster, I honestly don't see a huge leap. The visuals look a bit better, sure, but nothing that feels truly next-gen. On my PS5, the movement and combat even felt a little sluggish at times. It's still a solid experience, but this version doesn't completely justify its return. For me, it lands in the good tier. The Nioh Collection is packed with value, and I can't deny how much content you get here. Both Nioh and Nioh 2 are deep, challenging action RPGs with fast combat, tons of loot, and a strong mix of Japanese history and mythology. Having all 6 DLCs included makes this feel like the complete experience, and Nioh 2 especially shows clear improvements in enemy variety and level design. That said, as a PS5 remaster, it doesn't feel like a huge upgrade over just playing the PS4 versions through backwards compatibility. The performance is better, but not dramatically different. Even so, as a bundle of 2 excellent games, this collection earns a solid spot in the great tier. Horizon Zero Dawn Remastered honestly changed my mind about what a remaster can be. I didn't think this game needed one, but after playing it, I can clearly see the difference. The lighting and textures are massively improved, and the world looks more alive and cinematic. Snow looks like real snow, water looks more natural, and the foliage makes everything feel richer and more detailed. Cutscenes are also upgraded with better camera work and character models, which makes the story moments hit harder. On top of that, the DualSense support adds real tension to Aloy's bow and makes combat feel more physical. It's still the same great game at its core, just presented in a much stronger way. For me, this version earns its place in the great tier. Senua Saga Hellblade 2 pulled me right back into Senua's painful and intense world from the very first scene. The visuals are absolutely stunning, with realistic faces, detailed environments, and some of the best lighting I've seen. Playing with headphones is a must, because the voices in Senua's head and the environmental sounds make everything feel close and unsettling. The combat is brutal and personal, and even though it's fairly simple, every fight feels heavy and impactful. I do wish there was a bit more depth to the gameplay, since it doesn't evolve much over the 6-hour story. Still, the storytelling, atmosphere, and presentation are so strong that the experience stays with me long after it ends. For me, this stands proudly in the excellent tier. Silent Hill F takes the series in a bold new direction, and I really respect that. The Japanese setting in the 1960s feels fresh, and exploring the village of Ebisugaoka gave me a strong sense of place. Hinako is also a great lead, with real emotional depth, and the story dives into some dark and disturbing themes that stayed with me. The art design and puzzles are definite highlights, especially in the shrine sections, which are creative and memorable. But the melee combat didn't fully work for me. Managing stamina, sanity, and fragile weapons felt more frustrating than tense, and fights often felt like a chore. Even so, the atmosphere and storytelling are strong enough to carry it. For me, this lands in the good tier. Absolum starts strong with combat that feels smooth, fast, and satisfying. The characters all play differently, and chaining combos together feels great once everything clicks. You can tell a lot of care went into the fighting system, but the roguelite structure drags the experience down. Early deaths often feel tied to low stats instead of skill, and important moves are locked behind temporary upgrades, which makes the base moveset feel incomplete. There's also a lot of repetition in the early hours, with the same routes and enemies showing up again and again. It does get better once progression builds up and runs feel more meaningful, but it takes too long to reach that point. Because of that uneven design, this ends up in the mediocre tier. Horizon Forbidden West Complete Edition takes everything I loved about the first game and pushes it to another level. The world is absolutely stunning, from dense forests to deserts and snowy mountains, and it constantly makes me want to explore instead of fast travel. Combat feels deep and flexible, with so many weapons and elemental options that I'm always thinking about strategy before taking on huge machines like Thunderjaws. Aloy's skill trees and gear upgrades let me shape her playstyle the way I want, and the story is emotional, well-acted, and paced in a way that keeps me invested. With the Burning Shores DLC included, it feels like a complete and polished package. This easily earns its place in the masterpiece tier. Elden Ring already felt like a once-in-a-generation experience, and Shadow of the Erdtree somehow makes it feel complete. The base game gave me a massive world packed with mystery, brutal fights, and unforgettable discoveries. Then the DLC took me to the Land of Shadow and brought back that early game fear and struggle all over again. Every boss demands patience and precision, and every new region feels handcrafted and layered with secrets. I love how the new weapons, builds, and blessing system refresh the challenge without changing what makes the combat so strong. More than anything, It's the atmosphere and world building that stay with me long after I stop playing. Together, this represents dark fantasy at its absolute peak, earning a clear place in the masterpiece tier. Ragnarok had a lot to live up to, and within the first hour I knew it was going to deliver. The story between Kratos and Atreus hits even harder this time, balancing epic scale with deeply personal moments. I felt everything: anger, grief, hope, even humor, thanks to incredible performances across the cast. Combat evolves in smart ways, building on the Leviathan axe and Blades of Chaos, while adding new mechanics that keep every fight fresh and intense. The boss battles are brutal and cinematic, pushing me to use every tool I had. Visually, the 9 realms are breathtaking, each one distinct and packed with detail. With meaningful side content and a powerful emotional conclusion, this stands tall in the masterpiece tier. Returnal threw me onto an alien planet and refused to let me feel comfortable for even a second. The fast, frantic combat is intense, with bullet hell chaos filling the screen while I dash, weave, and fire back. Every weapon feels different, especially once traits start unlocking and completely change how they play. The risk and reward system keeps the tension high, since one mistake can end a strong run. I also really liked how the time loop story slowly reveals itself through logs and strange, surreal moments. Runs can feel long, but the atmosphere, challenge, and constant push to improve kept me going. This one earns its place in the excellent tier. Final Fantasy VII Rebirth took everything I liked about Remake and expanded it in a huge way. The story continues right away and keeps building towards something bigger, with emotional moments and massive set pieces that genuinely surprised me. Exploring the open world felt rewarding, with meaningful side quests and activities that felt worth my time. Combat is deeper this time, especially with the new synergy attacks and expanded party options, which make every major fight feel spectacular. With its scale, heart, and unforgettable moments, this sits in the masterpiece tier. Marvel's Spider-Man 2 builds on everything the first game and Miles Morales did well and pushes it further. Switching between Peter and Miles keeps the story fresh, and I liked how both characters have their own struggles that eventually connect in a big way. The Kraven arc is strong, but Venom really steals the show with intense, dramatic moments. Swinging through New York feels better than ever, especially with the new web wings that make traveling faster and more dynamic. Combat is smoother, abilities are more varied, and the spectacle during major fights looks incredible. There are a few technical issues on PC, but when it runs well, it looks stunning. Because of its strong story, improved gameplay, and overall polish, this lands in the excellent tier. Rise of the Ronin takes Team Ninja in a different direction, and I went in knowing it would not be another Nioh. Instead of tight mission-based levels, this is a full open-world set during the final years of the Edo period, and I like that change of pace. The combat is still fast and satisfying, especially when landing perfect parries and breaking enemy ki, but it is more forgiving and less complex than their previous games. Exploration feels steady, with side activities, stealth options, and plenty of gear to experiment with. The story touches on interesting political themes, even if it leans into spectacle instead of strict historical accuracy. It does not hit the same highs as Team Ninja's strongest titles, but it is still a solid and enjoyable experience, which places it in the good tier. Sword of the Sea feels amazing to play because the movement is so smooth and fast. I loved surfing across the sand, grinding on huge chains, and riding through waves of water that bring the world back to life. There's no dialogue, but the story is told through the environment, and I liked figuring out its meaning on my own. One quiet moment riding on a flying turtle really stayed with me. The game is short, and the story can feel a bit abstract, but the atmosphere and flow keep it engaging from the start. It doesn't reach the very top for me, but it easily earns its spot in the good tier. Demon's Souls Remake looks incredible, and the atmosphere pulled me in right away. The combat feels heavy and satisfying, especially when I learned enemy patterns and landed clean backstabs or well-timed spells. Each world has its own identity, and exploring them feels tense in a good way. Some bosses are very creative, even if a few rely more on specific mechanics than pure combat skill. The world tendency system is confusing at first and can punish you for dying without much explanation, but once I understood it, I started to see the depth it adds. It's challenging and sometimes frustrating, but the strong presentation and rewarding progression place it in the excellent tier. The Last of Us Part 2 Remastered is one of the most emotionally intense games I have ever played. From the first few hours, I could feel how heavy and personal the story was, and it never lets up. The performances, music, and small character moments feel incredibly real, and some scenes stayed in my head long after I finished. Combat is brutal and tense, with every bullet and decision carrying weight. The remastered version adds extra modes and visual upgrades that make it feel complete. It is not an easy journey, but the bold storytelling and powerful execution put it clearly in the masterpiece tier. Forza Horizon 5 is a racing game I can relax with and still feel amazed every time I play. The Mexico map is huge and varied with deserts, jungles, cities, and even a massive volcano, and I never get tired of driving across it. The cars feel smooth and responsive, whether I'm drifting down mountain roads or racing at full speed on the highway. The visuals and lighting look fantastic, and the sound design makes each car feel different. There's so much to do, from custom events to online challenges, and it never forces me into anything I don't want to play. It may not change everything about the formula, but the scale, polish, and fun factor easily place it in the great tier. That's my full ranking of the best PS5 games I've played so far, based purely on how each one felt from start to finish. From unforgettable masterpieces to titles that missed the mark, every placement reflects the experience that stayed with me the most. Thanks for watching.